Hello and welcome to What the Hack, where we ask what happens when your timing issues alerts turn out to be a hacker's roadmap into your cloud. This is the cybersecurity confession booth, where anonymous practitioners share real security incidents and our expert panel breaks down what went wrong and how to do better. I'm Rayna Stamboliyska, CEO at our Strategy and a practitioner in residence at the Paris based Center for Internet and Society. Today, you will discover how infrastructure as code can simultaneously be your security salvation and your biggest blind spot, and how a two-person security team learned that consistent deployments don't guarantee consistent security.
This episode is brought to you by Sysdig GCP and Predictive.
Welcome to another confession at the cybersecurity confession booth. Today we have Petra and Danny with us. And before we start, I will ask you to introduce yourselves in short, 1-2 sentences. I know all of us have a lot of things to say about our experience, but we can distill this further down the line. Petra, shall we start with you?
Hi, everyone. I was just about to share my life story. You ruined it for me, Rayna. Okay, I'll be short. Fair enough. So I'm Petra. I'm head of information security at Numan, and I'm also at the same time a fractional head of product at DevArmor, where we do cool stuff with threat modeling and AI. I've been in security since 2019. I started off as a security engineer from a background of being a medical doctor. And even though a lot of people think why, I found that there's a lot of transferable skills that you can take in from medicine, including managing crisis situations very well. So that's pretty much me. I'm going to sum it up to there.
Well, let me take that back about the life story. Well, we should talk about this more because I come from biology, from life sciences too, from evolutionary biology. So yeah, there's definitely a topic there, but let's leave that for another time. Danny, over to you.
Cool. I'm Danny Palmer. I'm a freelance cybersecurity journalist, probably best known from ZDNet, where I spent 7 years as senior reporter.
Yeah, and a lot of good stories there, and very much looking forward to the ones that you're going to break next. So, today we're going to talk about, I don't know actually, I just know that it's cloud misconfiguration. So, let's start with the beginning of our confession and hear from the person what they have to say, what they have been through.
To protect the innocent, this confession has been voiced by an actor.
I joined my company pretty recently. It's one of those born in the cloud organizations that does everything it can to be innovative and take advantage of what is out there. We are pretty forward-looking. Our team is a DevOps one, mainly developers. Then you have me and my colleague doing all the security and operations stuff. We have automated a lot of our deployment approach using templates and tools like Terraform and Helm. This makes it easier to deploy stuff into the cloud and keep things consistent. Sometimes we get alerts about resource configurations that don't quite match what we expect from our templates, but we usually assume it's just timing issues with deployments. Then one day, we got alerts from a batch of our cloud instances. Someone was attacking them, trying to exploit some of our public-facing applications and get into our cloud instance.
Huh. I see quite a few fun things there. Two people doing security for a DevOps team with, well, mainly dev rather than ops. Petra, let's start with you. Something that sticks with me is they're dismissing configuration alerts as timing issues with their deployments. Is there any specific, say, infrastructure as code frailties that this attitude could be masking?
Absolutely. The problem is that a lot of times when you get alerts from things like guard duty or any other, native cloud kind of intrusion detection systems, you do get a lot of alerts that are artifacts just from, deployment activities, all the changes that the DevOps team does. So I can see how they can probably get a bit of alert fatigue, and they just think every single alert is kind of like, yeah, sure, I'm sure it's fine. My colleague was doing something yesterday. He probably triggered it. So, and even the ones where you get a lot of these brute force attack on a machine, but a lot of times these alerts don't tell you, was it actually successful? Because in the wild, if you have an open machine, that machine is going to get hammered a lot of times, especially if you don't have some security controls in place to reduce that.
Right. Danny, this developers prevalent thing is triggering me a little. They're described as the main team, right? With security doing operations stuff. How does this role dynamic, let's say, typically affect security decision making in DevOps environments?
Well, I think, I used to cover a lot of DevOps back in the day, and one of the things that was always apparent was, their essential mindset is sort of move fast, and it's that move fast and break things mindset, which immediately sort of triggers in the back of my head going, okay, maybe security isn't being top priority here. And especially when it seems like the security team are very much a minority group within this organization. So there's sort of a couple of potential alerts there. And the speaker was also kind of sort of dismissive about sort of these alerts coming through as well, which again is sort of slightly sort of a bit of a red flag for me. And then of course you've got the public facing cloud aspect to it. And over the years I've reported on so many incidents which have essentially started with a public facing cloud application or database, be it sort of someone's sort of office suite, productivity suite login, or a database with no private data on it. So yeah, there's a couple of things there which doesn't sound like it's going to go very well.
Right. I'm tempted. Oh, sorry, Petra, go ahead.
If I may add just one
Sure.
thing as well, there is like this principle, one of the core security principles called segregation of duties, and that means that your auditor, hence the security team, should be different than your implementer. But here it's just one person, so they're already breaking that principle.
Yeah, I'm tempted to offer you guys a T-shirt each that says DevOps keeping the stab in stability. But yeah, let's get back to the consistency aspect of things, right? They say they've automated deployments for consistency. This is what we all do, right? But they ignore the configuration alerts. Let's drill into this paradox. What does that reveal about how teams balance speed versus security validation?
Yeah, I think it's quite obvious that they probably do a lot of deployments and changes every day, and they don't distinguish when an alert could be actually significant and when it is. I mean, that also maybe doesn't tell just about them. It just tells also their tooling is not configured the right way to point at, to distinguish false positives from positives. So the team gets alert fatigue, and they just kind of go deaf on any kind of alerting.
Danny?
I would say that alert fatigue is exactly the phrase I was thinking of too, where you hear so many incidents where alerts have come through saying something's wrong, but because the team, either they've got false positives or they've got their focus on something else, they just ignore it, which in this case, I presume, hasn't gone very well, especially in a cloud and remote environment like that. I mean, alert fatigue could even be for just users. You hear about attacks targeting MFA, for example, and just the attacker will just keep literally sending the alerts until the user clicks, okay, fine, yes, that I will click this because I'm being sort of targeted 100 times by this. But yeah, alert fatigue definitely sounds like something that is going on here.
Let me get back to the segregation of duties because I hear you and I agree. What blind spots in the shared responsibility model would you be most concerned about here?
I think Danny summed it up quite well before when he said, like you have a different mindset. If you're the implementer, you don't want to be stopped. You want to move forward, which makes sense also if you think about the way that you work, right? You get hyper focused into doing some coding, infrastructure's code, doing a technical task, and you don't want to kind of stop and think about some other issues that might come along. So that's where you need a security team to actually introduce guardrails, right? Like to introduce auditing of what's deployed even before deployment, like, infrastructure as code scanning. So that way, that forces them to stop and think. But this way, they don't want to be stopped. They just want to, stay focused on their task and deploy new things. Because that's also how they get measured, probably. They might have their own goals that the company set on them, and it might be, a number of deployments.
Danny, something to add on the segregation of duties aspect?
I mean, a lot of it sounds like, they say it's a cloud native company. It sounds like it's appeared in the last, at least sort of 10 years at a maximum. So it might still have that startup mentality where they just want to keep moving forward and do what they want to do. And so many times, security gets pushed to the back of the line in this sort of thing. Because security is still seen as the department of no, or the restrictive one. And if they want to just keep going out, pushing out these new developments, okay, we've got to get this development out by this week. Or security says that we need to stop and apply these updates and patches, or pay attention to this. They simply essentially don't want to, which is not great. It seems this turns out.
Yeah, it's in two sentences. What is the most plausible scenario, or two most plausible scenarios, let's say, in this configuration to both of you?
Yeah, I mean, I can see something happening where that public cloud gets accessed or compromised. That seems to be what might happen here, especially when they seem to be sort of ignoring the potential alerts about it as well. Obviously, public cloud has a lot of positive uses. It's why people use it, but there's also security uh, things to think about with it, which it seems like might not have been fully considered in this situation.
Petra.
The way I see it is absolutely the alert will probably get ignored until they get another alert that will kind of fit into a bigger picture. And what might happen is that they had a machine that's not patched and was open, and maybe had some ports open they weren't supposed to be open, and an attacker exploited a vulnerability, probably maybe like a kind of like a Postgres vulnerability, and managed to get into a container, something like that. I'm being creative now, but maybe that's something that could happen.
Right. Yeah, my speculation is in that line of thought as well. But so let me get to part two, where we have the actual incident described.
Okay, these alerts started coming in. We could see this was a pretty determined attacker, and that they were at the keyboard trying to escalate access. One trick they pulled was trying to move between cloud services and cloud infrastructure. The attacker was trying to get into our S3 buckets because that was where our valuable data should be. They tried a few different methods to get in, but our instances were pretty well hardened. We run some infrastructure as a service and some platform as a service tools. We were going through a response plan, and we thought they had given up on those S3 buckets as targets, but in reality, they were trying a different route, switching between IaaS and PaaS. Our reporting on those infrastructure and platform services was in different places, so we were behind on correlating all those actions together. Rather than giving up, they were trying to take advantage of a blind spot we had.
All right. So I feel our speculations are a bit off. But this gets me to a favorite topic that seems to be, correct me if I'm wrong, configuration drift. That's difficult to detect, especially with this mixed bag of beans. Let's say, because they said infrastructure as a service and platform as a service being used at the same time, right? Which adds another layer of complexity here. Petra, attackers successfully exploit blind spots between these two monitoring, like the monitoring of these two technological approaches. How should the team adapt their response now that they understand this technique?
I think the best, like, you mean as a lessons learned after the incident?
We'll do the lessons learned after, but like during the incident, you realize that your coordination of monitoring between the twin technological architectures, if you like, are off. So what do you do? Because the attacker is still trying to get in, and it's still there, and it's doing lateral movement of sorts, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, the best way to do it is to try and dig into the logs and trying to figure out, first of all, where is the attacker and what permissions do they manage to obtain so far. Like, forget about what they're trying to do, but let's try and figure out, where are they? Are they in a machine? Have they managed to get access to that bucket? Because sometimes in machines, they do put like IAM keys for buckets. So attackers get in and they're like, oh, great, I have some keys here that I can use. So I would, even though, what happened is like, it was a red herring, I think the approach should still be the same. Like, find out where the attacker is, kick the attacker out, so invalidate the access the attacker has, and then figure out like how you're going to do the monitoring and what happened and dig into the logs. But the first thing is contain it. So essentially, see what access the attacker has and invalidate those keys, invalidate that access.
Right. Danny, let me turn to you. The DevOps team says we followed our incident procedures, but they still missed the attacker's strategy shift, right? So what does this suggest about how security procedures integrate with developer workflows during incidents?
I think taking it back a step as well, the fact that the first alerts were ignored hasn't helped this situation. But it's an interesting one, because they want to keep, they want to sort of do their job, but the security team want to do their job as well. And it's just like, it feels like there is already so many different instances of where this maybe could have been caught or contained, even now, sort of while the incident is active or things going on. It sounds like, from what we've heard from the confession, is that these might have been siloed to some extent, but not fully, which has allowed the attacker to sort of move back and forth sort of between them, which is sort of, it's a cliche, but it does sound like they're playing a bit of whack-a-mole, with like they think they've got where the attacker is in their buckets, and they found, okay, no, they moved somewhere else already. So it feels like they are, what's an issue here is they are behind, essentially. They are 2 steps behind the attacker in this sort of trying to contain it, which is not great for them, because obviously you want to ensure, ideally you want to be 2 steps ahead of the attacker, stop them getting into the environment in the first place. But it seems like here they are just behind in each step. Maybe that's because the way that the things have been configured means it's the attacker has no easy access to a bunch of different things. I mean, it's one of the most common means of attackers carrying out cyber attacks and misconfigurations, because even sort of very large organizations of dedicated security teams can misconfigure their various different cloud services, especially in sort of a multi-cloud, hybrid cloud environment. So when a smaller organization has this problem as well, I think we're seeing the consequences of that here.
Right. Petra, let me get back to you, because we spoke earlier about segregation of duties, responsibility models. And now we have, let's say, the technical background how this materializes even further here, right? So there is monitoring in different places. Apparently, there is a disbalance in a way between the amount of people generating bugs in agile mode, those being the developers, and the security team. How do these visibility gaps in the shared responsibility model typically get exploited?
Well, it's a good question. I think one thing that I noticed that security teams are very focused on, and that's the infrastructure monitoring, because it also relates to, the old school on-prem kind of thinking, let's just monitor the servers. But then the developers, their mindset would be, let's just, do our APM monitoring, your applications, let's check the errors, let's understand, if there's any outages in terms of application side, like finding bugs. So the best approach is when you have everything together and it's like in a SIM, it's like in a centralized location. But for that, you need a very mature security team, and you need also a lot of money for a good SIM. So that's why attackers, when they attack, they don't care about, where the monitoring is. They just kind of find what is their easiest way in. And then, they realize that, oh, I'm in and nobody noticed. Let me move on.
Right. Danny, let's get to, let's take a step above, if you like. What does the attacker's patience, let's say, or thorough exploration in switching tactics reveal about current cloud threat landscapes?
It's still a complex issue. I mean, especially as obviously 5 years ago, a lot of organizations had this sudden transition to cloud-based systems and services, where there was a sort of a mindset around, having just one cloud environment is something of a security risk, because if it means that if that's popped, everything's popped. So having sort of different a multi-cloud environment in theory might improve security somewhat, but as we've seen in this case, it sounds like these different environments haven't been configured correctly, and the attacker seems to know this in some respect, and the attacker seems very determined to go about their business. So they seem to have a particular goal in mind, and maybe even this particular organization in mind, which is interesting. And yeah, and in terms of the misconfigurations and the cloud-based things as well, what they're doing whilst they're in the system sounds like it could be quite a sort of well-planned strategy. In terms of getting in, attackers love that lowest hanging fruit. So things like a public-facing configuration or a database is an easy win for them.
Hearing you, both of you, Petra, what you said about, monitoring the servers, the on-premise approach, and hearing you, Danny, talking about this very, not say overnight shift, but still, it's very quick. Does this scenario that we're hearing unfolding through the Confessi, does this scenario suggest that we are seeing attacks that are specifically designed for modern DevOps environments? Or are we seeing more traditional techniques adapted to cloud architectures, like more of the same as before?
I think we see both. Like, attackers are so diverse. This seems like a bit of a sophisticated attacker. It's not your usual script kiddie, like Danny said. And there is so many attackers out there that just try their luck. And I don't think that they change their strategy. They just add another one to their palette. So, if you say attackers are now using AI, well, they're probably also using still their old tools that they're using. They're not changing. They're just adding one extra attack to the palette of attacks that they have. So I think there's just such a great diversity of attackers out there. And you can see that by if you just look at web application firewall traffic, or even if you just put an open machine out there and see how much it gets hammered.
Right, Danny?
I think Petra's right. There's sort of the attackers continue to use their old methods. I mean, I remember this is a couple of years ago now. It was about 5 years on from the sort of Eternal Blue WannaCry attacks. Massive, critical vulnerability. Organizations were told to patch right away. 5 years on, it was still the most common exploit that was being used to get into networks and servers. So there are cases where the attackers can be very sophisticated, and this one seems to have tailored their attacks to this specific DevOps based operation. But in many cases, I guess it's the old ones are still the classics. They're still the ones they're always turn to. I mean, in this case, with the cloud based applications, I mean, it sounds like in this case, though, the organization did have more than just basic security up, but so many breaches still come from brute forcing extremely basic passwords. You get sort of places like the NCSC release their list of the most breached passwords, and it's still things like password and 1234556, which is interesting.
Tragic, I would say, but I'm a drama queen. So, okay, keep those thoughts. Let's get to the resolution, and see the outcome, and let's try and extract repeatable practices and explore culture and metrics from the outcome.
We stopped the attacker, and we were able to remediate our systems so no one else could get in. After this, we started thinking about how they were able to get access in the first place. If they were good enough to get in, why didn't they get any further? When we looked at our configurations, we found the answer. The cloud instances linked to the public-facing application were not set up effectively. Well, they were set up okay at the time, but they were not up to date. The attacker got in through a misconfiguration loophole that we had left open. They could not get into the main instances, but they had achieved initial access. We thought of it as them accessing the porch on the house. There was some stuff in there, but it wasn't valuable enough compared to what they thought they could get if they could access the main house. When they tried our other systems, those had been configured more recently. That stopped them from being able to get full access. I think that threw them for a loop. Like, this worked before, why is it not working now? By then, we had closed the door, and we then removed them from our cloud. Then we closed down public access to those cloud instances that they had accessed in the first place, so they could not get back in again. What did we learn? You have to keep up with your configurations. When we looked at our Helm charts, some of them were not up to date. We fixed those, and we made it a point to keep updating them on a regular basis too.
Right. Now that we know configuration drift was the root cause, right? Petra, how does this change your assessment of their initial dismissal of those timing issues alerts?
I guess, we were mentioning alert fatigue, but also there was probably an element of, I'm trying to choose the right word, an element of the unknown, because it seems like they weren't monitoring two systems at the same time. And it seems like they thought they configured something correctly and they were very confident of their configurations, but it seems like that wasn't the case. So it's not just about alert fatigue here, it's also about neglect of whatever asset they put out there to maintain it.
Right. Danny, how should the team, because it seems to be one and whole team, right? How should they rethink the relationship between development velocity and security maintenance? What Petra was just saying.
But it seems like it does come back to that, the developer mentality of always moving forward, always wanting to focus on the next thing, where in this case, that almost came back and sort of bit them, because they were so focused on moving forward, they hadn't really thought about, the stuff, the building blocks this is all based upon, with the sort of those misconfigurations. I mean, maybe they could have been, they were configured correctly at some point, I assume. But no, as time moves forward and things change, updates get released, patches come out, software changes, that can lead to it being very different. So yeah, I think there needs to be more of a connection between security and dev here, because if that had been the case, maybe this might not have happened.
Right. Petra, let's drill a little into the technical side of things. What architectural changes or technological enhancements, if you like, would prevent similar drift-based incidents in the future? I mean, we know we have tools that do automatic updates whenever an update is available.
Yeah.
I'm not naming names, but
Yeah, developers don't like them, to be honest, because they can break the application. So developers are very skeptical about these. So I would say, in terms of architecture, first of all, they should go with, secure by design. So even initially make sure that even if a misconfiguration happens, a patch is not applied, maybe the impact wouldn't be so big, like follow the least privilege principle. Don't give machines a lot of permissions to access data, only what it needs. Don't run containers as root. So do all, the best practices that your native cloud gives you. AWS has its own best practices, GCP as well. All the clouds, will tell you what are the main principles you have to follow for a secure by design architecture. So once you have that, and also networks, you have to make sure that you don't open up your ports too much, that your network security is sound. Once you're happy with that, then obviously there has to be an element of continuous monitoring. So introduce infrastructure as code scanning, so that you have a continuous monitoring of your systems, and if a drift happens, you get alerts. And those alerts are not somewhere in a hidden system. They come into your Slack, they come into your email, or any other platforms that you use for alerting.
Let me get on something that I feel we have underexplored here a little, Danny. There is this partial success, right? Initial access achieved, but they stopped at the porch, right? Nobody broke a window, nobody entered the house. I like the metaphor, by the way. How might this partial success affect the dynamic, if you like, between the development team and the two-person security team, especially if the latter adds in more tech requirements, as Petra was just recommending?
It's an interesting one. I mean, they get. I suppose the security team could be sort of vindicated in a way by say, okay, yeah, you did sort of listen to us once. They'd got into the porch, but if you'd had proper locks on the porch, this wouldn't have happened in the first place. So I hope that in this situation that the lessons learned, there are lessons learned from this, and the sort of security team does take that. So this could have been led to a massive, some sort of massive breach, which fortunately was stopped in real time. It sounds like, which is quite impressive in of itself, because you don't hear too much about that happening. It's usually once they're in, they're in. So yeah, I'd hope that the security team has a bit more sway in future. But with this organization operating how it does, that might not be a simple shift, because the developers want to get on with what they're doing. They don't want to be told no or hold up here. So yeah, it's an interesting one, and we might never know, but it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic has changed going forward. And maybe they need more than just two people in their security team.
Right. Before we go to the concluding questions, Petra, can you give us a little more insight into, like, piggybacking on what Danny just said? What would convince developers to prioritize, well, or at least to accept that configuration maintenance has precedence or at least is as important as feature development?
Oh, that's the eternal question that every single security person, professional has to answer. Every company has a different approach because depends on the culture, right? Some companies will learn from the incident and they'll be like, oh no, okay, we learned our lesson. We're going to do better. Some companies, you might see like kind of an apathy towards this, and mistakes will get repeated. Our job as security professionals is to be influencers. We need to be able to convince our stakeholders that security risks is something that can hold company back. So we can always go back to, for example, the business value, the financial impact of an incident. How much time did, operational impact? How much time did this team lose just trying to resolve this incident? Was there any money loss? Like, was there a data breach that they had to report and they got fined? So if everything gets converted into financial terms and operational terms, this is the language that businesses could understand a bit better. And in terms of the developers themselves, I think a lot of good developers do have an internal pride and they actually do want to do the best thing. So I think sometimes applying to that also helps, get them around and makes them realize that they have to not only make sure they make amazing new things, but also ensure that whatever they build never gets compromised.
Right, and runs as intended. And yeah, Dan, is something to add on this? Because you've done a lot of reporting on this, right? So something to complement before I get you to conclude.
Yeah, I think just that financial aspect is a big thing because so many times over the years, you've seen organizations get breached to, they almost have the sort of "it's not going to happen to us" mentality, or no, why should we spend X amount of money on security when we should be doing something else? And it's so often, the money only starts getting spent on that after an incident has happened, by which point you've lost loads of money. But I suppose it's one of those things. It's like, having they see it as a risk. I suppose they see it as, okay, well, we could be spending money on securing our networks, but what's the value in that? We don't know if attackers are after us. It's sort of you only know and understand the value of it if an attack doesn't happen, as it were. It's one of these things. It's the difficult thing about security, where if it's doing well, if it's well financed, you don't hear about security because things are running well. Where if there is a lack of resources, that's when you sort of you're more likely to hear about it. So yeah, if you take this to a business level, ultimately affecting the bottom line is what businesses understand. And maybe organizations in the sort of similar to this could take this on board as something that they need to be paying attention to, get it sort of nipped in the bud before it happens to them.
And if I may add, sometimes it's not developers that you need to convince. Like, a lot of times developers really do want to do the best thing. It's more the business, because the product or the business, they put commercial goals on them and they press them really hard. And then developers just don't have the time to go back and do the maintenance because they're pressurized with some kind of other goals. And that's why it's important to make sure that in setting those teams' goals, also risks are revisited and, maintenance is visited, and that can be turned into commercial goals as well.
Right. Haha. I was thinking about a concluding question for you, well, for each of you. So, Petra, in one sentence, if you had to give one technical recommendation that would have prevented this entire incident, what would it be?
I would say get your alerting into order in a way that centralize it, make sure that you have coverage of all your systems, centralize it, and remove all your false positives so that when an alert comes in, it's relevant and you know where it's coming from, and you have enough logs to understand exactly what's happening.
Right. Danny, for you, what's the first organizational truth that tech companies need to accept to prevent incidents like this?
We've touched upon it already. I think this secure by design element is a key part of this, especially with sort of more with new technologies. Organizations are keen to get out their brand new thing. They want to be ahead of their competition. But if that means getting out there quicker, so okay, that's all well and good. But if you get it out there quicker and it's full of holes which can be exploited and put your organization, customers and users at risk, it's not going to be worth it in the long run. So yeah, I think this and trying to ensure that security by design is part of the process from the very start is important to try and help prevent incidents like this.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot. And I apologize to any developer being, feeling hurt. And I think we can conclude this confession by saying that the confessee is absolved from their sins. Thank you so much for being with us today. And I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Sysdig GCP and Predictive.
And that's another confession processed in our cybersecurity confession book. Grab your companion resources from the show notes and share this episode with your security and development teams. We're all facing these challenges together.